everybody. We're here with Greyson Grimes. How are you today?
I'm so good.
I love the name.
My mom gave it to me.
Nice. She did a good job.
She did a great
Just
job.
like flows.
Yeah.
Like I named my son Ryder Rain because I wanted him to have a name that you have to like live up to. Yours is good too. It's a solid name. What's your middle name?
Greyson.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
My first name is Guy.
Oh.
Guy Greyson Grimes.
Wow.
That's my full legal name.
That's actually really nice too.
Yeah. My social security number is 44. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. Super excited to have you on. I'm surprised we haven't met, but
I know.
obviously this was meant to be the day. So yeah, here we are. You are in recovery yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How much recovery time do you have?
My sobriety date is February 2nd, 2016.
Okay.
So tomorrow, God willing, I'll have 8 years.
Damn.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Tomorrow. I should have got you like a little cake or something. I feel bad.
No fronts.
Huh. Yeah, well, true. I'll call you tomorrow.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds good.
So you have 6 months more than me. Mine's August 5th.
We're twinsies.
We're twinsies. Aw. So had you tried, what have you got going on over there?
Sorry.
Are you okay?
It keeps falling.
Okay. That's, you know what? Mine was doing that. It kind of like,
Just gotta tighten it.
as the episode goes on, it's like, Is it that what it is though? Is that the part that does it?
Yeah. Just tighten that bad. Yeah. Tighten that bad boy. You're good.
I just feel like it's really tight already.
There you go.
Okay. So this last time when you got sober, was that the first time you tried to get sober or you've tried many times?
It was probably my, I would say, 5th or 6th solid attempt.
Okay.
I had obviously tried many times before on my own, but as far as like treatment episodes or hospitalizations and institutions, this was the last like 5th or 6th time.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it takes many, many, many times. I mean, for me, I tried to get sober off and on for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, before I finally did it. And it's funny because like people talk about like these bottoms. Oh, what was your bottom? And it's like, you would have thought this was my bottom, but you know, it just took a moment where that was just when it was time. Like, did you have some gnarly bottom or was it like, what was the moment like when you finally was like, I'm going to get sober for real?
I think I've seen a big misconception, at least for me, with what bottoms look like, because my circumstances could be absolutely awful, but I still have a lot in me still to keep getting high or keep getting loaded.
Yeah.
So circumstances are kind of, you know, here or there. For me, it's the spiritual bankruptcy that I got in this last time. It was pretty bad. I was living in Australia in 2015, and I got arrested for the 3rd time, and I was on a visa. And so I went to a place called Villawood Detention Center, and they deported me, and or they asked for my deportation. So I had 3 days to leave the country.
Okay.
So grown man calling mom.
Yeah. Mom.
Mom. Wait, can I curse on this podcast?
Yes, I think we're a minute in now. We're good. We're good. Yes, you can.
Okay, cool. I'm like, Mom, I'm all fucked up.
Yeah.
She's like, I thought so, you know. And I was like, I gotta get home. She got me a flight. She said, hey, if we get you home, this is the last. You know, I had already used up all the other times.
Right.
Last time, if you come home, you're gonna either go to treatment or we're gonna leave you at LAX on the street. So I said, screw it, I'll go to treatment. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. You know, but I had no plans on staying clean or sober. Absolutely not. But I floated with it. But yeah, so this last time was, I think my tank was empty, and for people who are entering in recovery, I always say, like, if you're not willing to surrender, you have to be willing to admit defeat. You know. Yeah. And I was at that point where I just kind of put my arms down. Yeah. And that was the point of change for me because direction was offered to me again, right? Because every other time it was offered to me, and I said, kick rocks, you know. This time, since I was willing to admit defeat, I took a little direction, so life started to change. But yeah. So
I like that you said that, you know, admit defeat. Yeah. Because if you don't have the other thing, you at least got to have that. Yeah. What was your drug of choice?
It started off with just like marijuana and then the opiates and then eventually alcohol. I mean, basically anything you had, you know, but alcohol, cocaine, heroin, pills, anything. But when I moved to Australia, there's no heroin.
Oh, really?
I mean,
well, back then,
if anyone finds any, let me know. I'm just kidding.
But don't contact him.
I could not score anything. So drinking and whatever, I got some sketchy some veterinarian to give me some stuff. But wow, just desperate. But yeah, alcohol brought me to my knees this last time for sure. Alcohol and cocaine.
Yeah, that's how it was for me too. Like I used for like 20 years off and on, and I was like a big pill head, like doctor prescribed, could never get enough sort of thing. And then, you know, my brain, of course, it was, you know, trying to rationalize with me, and it was saying, well, Jenny, if you just like drink, then you'll just get off all the pills. Yeah. Right. And then you'll just like stop drinking, like no brainer. And so I did that. And that was like for the last like 3 or 4 years. And it was a total blessing in disguise because the alcohol did take me out because I got so sloppy. Yeah. Like I was making a complete mess. It was super obvious something was wrong. Yep. You know, like I couldn't live my life like I was before. And even though I say I was a functioning addict, I at least was like getting up, could function, do stuff, get through the day, take care of my son. And the alcohol, that just like took me out. What were you drinking and how much?
I was drinking mostly whiskey, vodka. I would steal wine from it was easy to steal from like wine stores, at least. So, in Australia, but yeah, basically, I mean, I was drinking some random stuff too, some weird stuff as well. Like I remember finding something like Everclear kind of in Australia, and I was drinking that a little bit too. And basically anything I could get away with. Yeah. And then excessively. But the thing about alcohol is it's so much more gnarly on your body. Like, than, you know, even like IV using or popping pills or, you know, snoring stuff, whatever it is. But alcohol was so violent for me. It messed my body up. I got so sick. Like things were going wrong with me that
like
that
what kind of things?
Like I remember I would be like, I'd be probably I'd overtaking prescription pills too. But like I had to go to the hospital a couple of times because of I would pass out in random places. Like one time I passed out in my bathroom, but I ended up upside down, like in the bathtub. Yeah. Like with my head down. And I was in a blackout or something, and I came to hours later with my head down. So like I couldn't see for like a couple days. Holy shit. And it freaked me out. Yeah. And I was using a lot of ketamine at the time. Oh, wow. Yeah. So but alcohol would expedite anything I would use, right? Like if I mixed anything with it, or if I would drink excessively for a certain amount of time, things would be going wrong with me. I would have these pains in my back, which I thought was my back, but it wasn't. It was my kidneys. And like, I'd, you know, talking about kidney stones, like I would be like, it's so funny because I legit, since I'm an alcoholic, I can convince myself of anything. Right. So I convinced myself that it was like, something's wrong with me. Like,
it's not the alcohol.
There's something, I have some disease, you know, and it's funny because people would, the doctor or the friend or somebody who was consulting me about it, or, you know, I was sharing this stuff with, like, I don't know, it seems really odd. And I would say, I think I have something. And they're like, they would tell me, I think it's because of maybe the excessive drinking you're experiencing. And I just over my head, you know, there's no way it's that, you know. So
it's crazy the things we tell ourselves. Yeah, it's like we have no self-awareness at all, or we just don't want to see it to what's really going on. That's for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So where were you raised?
I was raised mostly in California. Okay. Originally born in Oklahoma, and raised in Modesto, and then Riverside, and then Orange County for the last 25 years.
Yeah. How was the childhood?
Childhood was a good childhood. Okay. My parents, both conservative Christians. My dad was a Southern Baptist pastor. Wow. Okay. So,
no alcoholism in the family?
Tons.
Okay.
Tons. Yeah. My mom and dad were dry. Well, not dry. They didn't drink because of family. Okay. And my mom and I actually got asked to speak at the convention last year, the AA convention. Wow. She was the Al-Anon main speaker, and I was the AA main speaker for the mixed meeting or whatever. Yeah. And I never heard her say it, and I never heard her say it like this until this last speaking engagement. But she said, you know, her mom died 40 years sober, but didn't have her in her life her whole childhood, right? Both of her brothers drank themselves to death. And then grandpa, I mean, all across my family, she said, I never drank because of what I saw doing to my family. Yeah. But she never went to Al-Anon until it showed up at her front door with her own son, you know? Wow. And so it snuck in with me. So I'm the alcoholic of our immediate family. My sister's a normie, parents are normies. And my parents were really good people, just doing their best, you know?
So when you say Al-Anon, for someone out there listening that doesn't know what that is, can you kind of break it down?
Absolutely. I have this conversation with people all the time. Al-Anon is a 12-step program to help loved ones and family members of people who are addicts or alcoholics. Okay. It's a 12-step program that essentially gives them the tools and the equipment to combat the disease of addiction. So a lot of boundaries, a lot of surrendering, a lot of working their own program, focusing on themselves. Our problem of alcoholism is we're drinkers, and their problem of alcoholism is they're thinkers. So they control, enable codependency a lot. And 12-step program of Al-Anon is meant to kind of give them those tools to become healthier people. Yeah. And I don't know if I'd be alive if it wasn't for my family doing Al-Anon.
Wow.
Because I really don't think so.
And that's because they had like the boundaries and did the work.
They cut me off.
Yeah, they cut you off. Because if they didn't cut you off,
it was, we first started talking about like kind of how I got here in Bottoms. I would say majority of the time, family removes the ability for the alcoholic to suffer in the way they need to. They completely remove and rob them of that misery that they need to surrender because they're enabling them. And my mom was a huge enabler. My dad, I think, struggled with kind of just, maybe not, it's not happening, but he didn't know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they both worked with like counseling people and helping people their whole life.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's so different though when it's like your own child.
Yeah, your family.
Because even like I think about it with my son, he's 15, and I'm like, wow, I would really need to be going to Al-Anon because I just feel like I would just want to just love him better,
Absolutely. So, yeah, for people who's interested or curious about Al-Anon, I will say this: for the alcoholic and the addict, right? We are so combative with 12 steps because we have a sickness that wants to keep us sick. So we're very pushed off from solution.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem natural for us. Same thing for the Al-Anoner. Same thing. The statistics that if I would write up numbers on this, I'm pretty sure they'd be accurate about, I say the same amount of people who are resistant to 12 steps for sobriety and a life happy, joyous, and free. The numbers of people who are reluctant to try that and do that are the same numbers of people who need Al-Anon.
Wow.
The amount of parents I talk to with sons and daughters who I tell them all the time. I say, hey, I highly recommend you find a nearby Al-Anon meeting.
Yeah.
If you want to see a change happen in your son or daughter or father, mother, I highly recommend participating in Al-Anon and working a program. How can you expect them to work a program if you're not going to work a program? Yeah. Right. You lead them there. And the amount of people that just don't do it is baffling.
Yeah. And even just on my social media, I have a lot of people reach out to, and I tell them go to Al-Anon, and it's surprising how many people don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
Like people all the time are like, what is that? And it's like, I think, well, for me at least, I forget because working in treatment and doing this for the past, several years, it's like my whole life.
Yeah.
So everybody around me is like in that community in one way or another. But when you're dealing with people just in general in the normal population, like they just don't know at all, And so like, it's good to be able to inform people about it. And I think everybody should do the steps in one capacity or not, It's just so valuable.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, if I don't believe that AA is like necessarily the only way. Yeah. But if you're like me, right? If you find relatability to what I've experienced and the feeling of hopelessness and spiritual bankruptcy, like we talked about, and you cannot stop, like chain on the door, mom's crying, and you're promising you're going to stop, and you promise you're never going to pick up again. You promise you're never going to do the same thing again. And 20 minutes later, you're doing the same thing again.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, if you relate to that, then I always tell people, then AA might be for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We were just talking before the podcast started, about people who are addicted to things and people who are addicts.
Oh yeah. Right.
Totally different people.
Totally different people. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some warning signs of somebody that is an addict? Like, what would that look like if someone's sitting at home being like, is that really me though? Or am I just addicted, or am I an addict?
Yeah. Well, the only way to find out, right, is to really get clean, right? Because when addicts and alcoholics get clean and we don't have a program, we're like a fish out of water, right? We are just irritable, restless, and discontent. We have such a deeper issue going on than just substances is merely just a symptom, right? The way we use is just a symptom. So, you know, me without drugs, you put me on an island, right, with no drugs and alcohol. The first red flag for me being an addict is I'm going to get some coconuts and some weird fruit and put it in some pot and ferment it and make some kind of weird cocktail to get smashed on, right? Just, you know, but that's the first red flag, is how we use. But the other thing is that, you know, remove those things away from us. And we are unlovely creatures, you know? And for some reason we can't have long-lasting healthy relationships. We can't be honest. We can't be, you know, we can't be dependable.
Yeah. And why is that? Like, what is that all about in your opinion?
My experience, at least through what I've lived, especially even in sobriety, because like I remember going a little bit of time without a meeting or helping people, and I know those symptoms that come out. The first thing is always the selfishness, right? I think that for us, we have this like inability to cope because we have this giant like God-shaped hole in us that is there for everyone. I think maybe for everyone, to each their own, but I think everyone's got some kind of thing they're trying to fill. But for us addicts, it's just such a festering, we're not okay with it. Yeah. We're not okay with it being there. And once I find that one thing that works, that promises me that one time and it delivers, then I'm so resilient to anything else. I just want to get that one thing, and I'm constantly chasing that one thing. And even though it promised me that one time and never follows through years and years and years later, I'm still convincing myself that it's going to be different. The insanity, I think, comes from this, like that festering of that God-shaped hole. But once I fill it with service for other people, and surrendering to God, and keeping a daily reprieve where I can stay in like enlightenment and I can stay in purpose, right? And that's the big thing for us, is having purpose. Yeah, we really need, we crave that really bad. But once I have that, that's my home base. But once it's removed, everything else, because I know, okay, my whole program, my whole life has been around drugs are bad. Don't drink, don't use, don't whatever. And that's only like 1% of the issue. Yeah. Right. So to answer your question is like, I think we all have to look at the part of like the simplicity of what really is happening. It's not drugs. It's not alcohol. It's the fact that I have this spiritual sickness that is unlike what normal people experience. Yeah. I need a purpose, and I need to help other people. It fulfills me. And we're very unique creatures.
Yeah, we are. You know, and we're so relatable in that way. It's like, I've done so many of these podcasts now, and I feel like everybody says that, you know, it's like I felt off, or I didn't fit in, belong as a kid. There was something always lacking, this void. Even people that come on and say, you know, I didn't have any childhood trauma, or I didn't have this, or I didn't have that. There's always like this feeling like you don't really belong. And like, I had that. I mean, I had the trauma too, but I had such a feeling of like, I didn't fit in, I didn't belong, nobody understood me. And it was always festering. Like, it was always there. And I got sober, and, you know, I didn't really do the work I should have done for a while, but once I really did, and the giving back part, like, that is like the key to happiness. I'm telling you, like, as soon as I started doing that and truly found like my purpose and my passion, it's like that, finally that hole was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's just, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I want to make sure I add about what we just talked about is that I think for any addict or alcoholic who, I think we crave authenticity so much. Yes. We can't do bullshit. We can't. No. we can spot bullshit from a mile away. So when you are doing the deal and you are actually present and you're practicing what you preach, that fulfillment of helping others is so it's like that's what brings the serenity, because when I was getting clean, I could just tell when people were just full of shit. And when I met people who were actually walking the walk and talking the talk, I was just like, I that's what was so I guess that's what affected me so much, that inspired me so much to stay. I
love that. The authenticity, just people being vulnerable. Like I thought I was the only one that suffered the way I suffered. No one else had it like me. And then like seeing these people be so vulnerable and me being able to like relate to them, like, oh man, you know, it's not just me. Like that community feeling is so huge. It's so important that everybody that gets sober, that they get to experience that. So when you got sober for good this last time, what did you do? Like walk us through what that looked like.
Well, I went to detox, and there was a gentleman that was my roommate in detox, and I had never been to AA. I had been through a lot of Christian programs, a lot of like faith-based programs, which are great, but never was introduced to 12 steps. And my roommate in detox, I woke up, a few mornings in a row, he was in my room and he would be on his knees reading this book. And I thought he was like, religious. I thought he might've been Muslim, Christian. I don't know what he was, but he was reading this book. And I asked him, I said, "Oh, are you like a Christian or whatever?" I didn't know what he was reading. He says, he's like, "Listen, man," he's like, "I had 3 years sober or 2 years sober. And I had a sponsor and he told me to do this every day. And I did it every day. And I had a great life. I had everything. And I stopped doing these things."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I went back for a week and it was the worst life I've ever lived or whatever. It was the worst week of my life. And so I'm just doing what he told me to do all over again. And that just shook me.
Yeah.
There was something authentic about that. Like there was no bullshit. And it was just, wow. And so he handed me a sponsor. He said, "Hey, I know a guy will sponsor you." I didn't even fully understand what a sponsor was.
That's what I was like, because I didn't know either.
I knew that AA meetings were like a group of people who met together and I was like, I drink and smoke heroin, whatever. But I never knew about the inner workings of it. So I was handed a sponsor. He told me to do some stuff. I half measured all my steps the first round. But I did get a lot out of that. And, so I went to meetings. I had a home group. I went to a lot of meetings. 4 months, when I was 4 months sober, insurance dropped me. So and all these people were going to these nice ass sober livings.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how they were doing that. And I was like, I don't know how any of this stuff works. So I just went on Craigslist. My family cut me off. No money, no groceries, no cigarettes, no overnight, no, nothing. I mean, even in 4 months clean, they're like, "You can't come home. You need to figure it out." And I just got a job with the Newport Club.
Okay.
I was the first security guard they ever hired.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember
security guard?
Yeah. Do you remember the Newport Club in like 2017? Were you ever there?
Yeah, I was there.
So there was nights where there's like 200 people.
Yeah, there was times where it was insane. Yeah.
And there was a lot of fights breaking out and a lot of unhealthy behavior going on there. People doing drugs in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Treatment kids doing
a lot
God
of treatment
knows what.
kids. Yeah.
So I had a history of doing some door stuff. So they hired me as a security guard at the Newport Alano Club. So I worked there, making like $9 an hour or something like that. I made about $800 a month doing that. And I would just be there all day going to meetings. Then I'd work and then go to more meetings. And I was just embarrassed because I didn't have any money. I had no car. And I remember I found a sober living on Craigslist for $650 a month. Wow. And it was on McFadden and Beach Boulevard in Westminster. I just took the bus. It was like 2 hours every day. Take the bus to Alano Club, go to meetings, come back. My family was like 4 miles away, and they were not able to help. They wouldn't help me, so I just had to figure it out. It forced me into this like
really
survival
yourself.
mode.
Yeah.
And just I'll finish up with this about this part of the question. But I had my first spiritual experience. I was working at the Newport Beach Alano Club, And I was too ashamed to ask for a ride home. Like I didn't tell people where I lived. Dude, the place I lived was basically a trap house. I had my own room where I can lock the key. It was like a 4-bedroom house turned into like a 16-bedroom house. These fake walls up. So I had a lock that I could lock my door, but there was bed bugs. It was disgusting. It was awful. Wow. But it was something I could afford, and I didn't know how to find anything else. And it was a sober living. So I was too embarrassed to ask him for a ride home. I had no money for a taxi or Uber or something like that. And the bus had left. I had missed the bus, working a later shift at the club. So I just thought to myself, I was just like, okay, I guess I better start walking, you know? And I don't know if you know how far.
That's to Westminster? That's really far.
Beach in the 405, yeah. So it took me about 3 hours to walk home. And I walked all down Beach Boulevard at like 11 o'clock at night.
Wow. That's just
I used to pick up down there, you know? And the crazy thing was, I didn't even think about it. All I kept thinking about was, at least it's not raining, and that's the key. That's the key. That's the gratitude. Like, if you can get to a place, you can stick around long enough, and live in acceptance long enough in your sobriety, and do the work, do the action, you'll start getting things like that. Where you're like, I had these shoes on I got from Goodwill for $5, and I kept thinking, dude, these shoes are like holding up really well. I was like, you know, my feet don't hurt, and I got home. And I woke up, did it all over again, you know? And that was my first spiritual experience sober. And
that consistency, humbling yourself, doing whatever you needed to do. Yeah.
And people leave before it happens.
They totally do.
People leave before they can experience something like that.
Yeah. You got to get uncomfortable, and you got to stick with it. I mean, you really got to want it, you know? So I hear this a lot. People with meetings, they're like, I can't find a good meeting. I don't like these people. Da 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 da. What do you say to those people out there?
You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate. But that's the tragedy of it. You know, you're walking around in a cancer ward, people who are dying of cancer, and they will not accept treatment. They won't try new things. They won't do things differently. And they have no idea that they're sick. They have no idea. And so when I hear anything like, I haven't found the right sponsor, I haven't found the right meetings, I almost kind of just like shut down and be as honest as I can. Because I used to want to really reel them in. You know, like, okay, well, I'll come pick you up. We'll take you this one meeting, you know? Yeah. But that's also the enabler and codependent that I am too. It's like, I have to lead by example. I have to show up and do the deal, and people can see it. And if they want help, they'll come to me, and I help them with whatever they can. I'll match their willingness in any capacity. Yeah. But when I hear people say stuff like that, I just shut down and be as honest as I can. I was like, where there's, you know, 2 or 3 or more gathered, there's a meeting able to happen. Yeah. And if you're thinking too much about that, you're missing it.
For sure.
You know, you're missing
Absolutely. And maybe, you know, if you don't think you're getting anything out of it, well, then say something useful while you're there and give back to somebody else.
Yeah. Or my sponsor would say, like, you know, if the meeting sucks, you know, because I remember my sponsor's really brutally honest about stuff like that. He's like, well, sounds like you didn't participate at all. You know, how did you participate in any of their recoveries today? You know, and 90% of the time it was me not participating. I was still being the director, the character, the main act, all that stuff. And I was just saying, oh, this place sucks. And it doesn't. It's just that my perception is broken. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Yeah.
So you're going to meetings every day, you're working, you're doing whatever it takes. Yeah. And then what went on after that?
Panels, all that stuff. And then 9 months sober, my sponsor said, I told him I want to go back on tour with my band. Okay. And he said...
So, because you're a musician, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you play? What genre?
I sing and play guitar and piano.
Okay, nice.
I'm I guess I'm numerous genres now, or multiple genres. Okay. I do singer-songwriter stuff. I did indie alt rock for a long time. Nice. And then I most recently am more in the heavier music, like post-hardcore, hardcore metal stuff. Okay. So, kind of all over the place, but most of my stuff's been just songwriting, composition stuff. Yeah.
And so you were doing that in your addiction.
Yeah.
So what was it like? Because now you're going to start doing your music again, right? What was that like, just newly sober?
Well, it sucks trying to make a music career when you're getting loaded, you know, because you can't show up for anyone else. You can't show up for yourself. So whatever promises you get, whatever opportunities you get, you burn them down. Yeah. So it sucks. You have this I've been doing music since I was 10. Been in band since I was 17. Pursuing this literally full time my whole life, even with addiction, without it. So when I got sober, I want to go back. I lost the deal. I lost the band. Lost the girlfriends back in Australia, right? So that was all done.
Did you go out there to play in Australia? Was that?
I went out there for school. Okay. I met some guys in school who did music. And so we started a band called Thatcher. And that band became like a pretty special thing out in Australia. And then when I went to treatment, I couldn't go back to Australia because when you get deported, you're not welcome back for a long time. I'm eligible this next year, though.
Nice.
So
was it because it's after like 10 years or?
It's technically 8 years.
Oh, 8 years.
But it just depends. Yeah. And I'll never be able to get a visa. I get a traveling visa. I don't think I'll be able to stay, like move there again. Yeah. But yeah, I told my sponsor I want to go back to do music again at 9 months sober. He said, I don't think you should do that. I think you should wait till you get a year and have that firm foundation before you go. And I said, I don't care, I'm going. So me and my buddy got in a car, drove out to Nashville, met up with the guitar player that was in my band. He moved back to the States too. We started the band up again.
Nice.
Did that for toured and played shows in the South for about 7 or 8 months.
And what was that like? Doing the shows, being sober?
It was awesome. I was broke. I had no money, but I was sober. I chain smoked cigarettes like it was nothing. And I played music several nights a week. It was amazing. I loved that. But when I first got there, since I had never done this before, moving and staying sober, I didn't find a meeting. I didn't get a new sponsor for like 3 weeks. And I was dry. This is what we were kind of talking about earlier about the whole, once you experience being a fish out of water, I didn't have a meet. I didn't go to any meetings. I didn't have a new community at all and no sponsor. And this girl called me, my rehab girlfriend, actually, by the way. The girlfriend I had in rehab.
Always the girl.
Yeah, she called me. She had just shattered my heart into a million pieces like months before this because I made her my higher power.
Oh, wow.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's totally natural, but don't do that. She called me to check on me and she's like, did you drink? I said, no, but I was this close to just going and drinking. Yeah. And she says, you look like because I look so miserable, in my apartment, like broke. I'd not been eating a lot. I've like lost a ton of weight. Yeah. And she said, promise me you'll go to a meeting tomorrow. And I don't know why it's so dramatic, but I did. I promised her and I did. And I walked to that meeting. I walked out. I was like, holy shit, that was close. Wow. I was like, that was so close. And I haven't missed a week of meetings ever since. Not even 1 week. Yeah.
So you go every week, no matter what.
No matter what.
That comes first. That's your number one priority.
Yeah. I want to go to I like to go to at least 3 meetings a week. I found my threshold. I always encourage people go to 90 or even more. And I find out like the amount I need to be at, the amount like, panels, speaking, sponsees. And I mean, I don't turn sponsees down. Whenever I get them, I take them. But 3 meetings a week is what I like to be at, but I haven't missed a week of meeting ever since then. Wow. Yeah.
So going through the steps, what do you think you learned about yourself the most?
The most important thing I learned I was an alcoholic by working steps. Okay. I didn't know I was an alcoholic before the steps.
Yeah. You were in denial?
I encourage people all the time. I was like, if you don't think you're an alcoholic, work the steps and find out. Because I didn't truly know that I had the spiritual sickness until I had worked all 12 steps and my life gotten better. I'd gotten much better. I had changed through the steps. So, and I realized I had a life worth living and I didn't need to drink. Yeah. And I didn't I tell people all the time, they're like, how can you stay sober for forever? I'm like, I never plan on staying sober. Yeah. I had no other option. I had nothing else left. Everything else I had tried. Yeah. And when I had the life that I had at the end of the 12 steps, I mean, not the end, but as I worked the 12 steps, it's like, why would I ever give this up? Why would I risk it? Yeah. Why would I risk drinking again if my life is so fulfilling? My family has me over for every holiday. They ask me to house sit for them. Yeah. They trust me. I've employed my parents in my sobriety. It's crazy. I mean, there's so many blessings I've had where my sister told me 2 weeks ago, she said to me, there was a time where I couldn't even trust you to hold a conversation with stuff. There was a time where I couldn't trust you to come over for a holiday dinner. you know?
Yeah.
And now she just had her first son. His name's Cash, and he's like 9 months old.
Oh,
she said, and today I could tell the whole world, full transparency, that I can bring my son to you knowing I would never be back, or something would happen to me. I could leave him with you, and I wouldn't even trip about it.
No.
I trust you, you know?
It's the best feeling, getting that trust back. And, you know, it's like, it takes a long time, and it takes like really doing the work, but it's so worth it. And we have this conversation often where, you know, sometimes people, they get sober and they think, okay, well, I got sober now and I feel better now. And so you need to just like leave me alone or understand and just trust me. And so it's like, what do you tell those people that are just super frustrated that their friends and family haven't come around yet?
I tell people all the time, I was like, don't quit before the miracle happens. I mean, as cliche as that sounds, everything will come back in tenfold. And it might not, but the thing is, it's not going to always look how you think it's going to look.
Yeah.
People have this, oh man, I have this whole thing I do with new people. I don't know.
And so are you a life coach, counselor?
I am a counselor.
Okay.
But I pull this vision thing up for new people all the time. Okay. I just tell them, I say, hey, you know what? The number one time of relapse is where our expectations aren't met when we get clean. We do like, we get promised this thing. It's kind of hard to do it without a wiper, but we get promised this thing. Someone knocks on your door, right? And they say, hey, congratulations, you want a free vacation, right? And you say, that's cool. Probably bullshit, but fine. So you take the thing, you walk in your house, and you're thinking to yourself, like, there's no way this is real. But just in case, I'm going to check it. I'm going to check to see if this is real. And, you know, you call this number, look it up. It looks like a real website. You're good to go. So you're like doubting it every step of the way, but you call out of work the next day and you say, hey, I'm sick. I can't come into work. Because the worst thing that could happen to you is that you get manipulated into this thing, and you're thinking, you know, and then you have to tell them that you're, manipulated into this vacation that's not happening. And so you go to the airport, you check in, they say, hey, congratulations, Mr. Grimes, here you go. Here's your flight. I'm like, holy shit, is this real? You get on the plane, it hits you on the plane. You're sipping a margarita, you're eating some pretzels. You're like, holy shit, this is happening. You land on this beautiful island in the middle of the ocean, and you start like thinking to yourself, like, this is the most incredible gift I've ever gotten, you know? And you start walking around the island, you realize there's no one there but yourself. And you're like, what's going on here? And you're there for a couple of days, and now you're starting to panic. So then this is where it gets a little unrealistic. But you grab some floss out of your bag and you cut down some palm trees and build a life raft. And then you somehow, by the grace of God, make it back home. But when you get back home, all your shit's gone. And, you know, this person that came to your house promised you something. You know, do you remember the first time you ever got loaded on your drug of choice?
First time?
Yeah.
No. I don't.
Most of the time people say, you know, they were with a friend or they were with somebody else, and they told them, they said, this stuff right here is, you know, or for me, it was the TV. The TV told me that when people drink alcohol, they would be happy and they would laugh and it would be fun. Right. And it is. Yeah. That's the truth, as it is. And that's what the plane represents, is the first time like you've ever like really arrived. You're like, this is actually real. Yeah. My first drink was when I was 11 years old. I went to the kitchen and there was a bottle of alcohol in there. And I remember thinking the people on TV who drank were always laughing and having fun. And I wanted to feel that. Yeah. Because I was really sad. I was a really sad kid. So I tried it. And when it actually happened, I was like, oh, wow, this is great. That's why a lot of people find themselves at the difference between becoming an alcoholic or just a drinker. Yeah. Some people could be addicted to it. Some people are an alcoholic. It's totally different. Yeah. And
what's the determining factor?
I would say people who, and like I said in the beginning, it's like that's the spiritual factor. It's like, I always wanted the feeling before I ever had it. Yeah. Yeah. Because I have that issue. I have that issue where I want to not be myself. Yeah. I want something to fix me because I'm not content with myself and anyone else, everyone else. Yeah. And that whole imagery of going back home, everything gone, people get sober and they expect that life is going to be the same. Yep. And they go back, or they think that people are going to still be there. People, while we were getting loaded, people were like getting married, having kids, going to college, going through divorces. People died. Family members died. We weren't even there. Yeah. So they get home and they think that, hey, this is how I expect it. And they get there and everything's gone. Yeah. And that's the number one thing I see for new people all the time is they get sober and they go home and they think, I'm 6 months sober, Mom. Like, I'm doing great. She's like, you're still not welcome here.
Exactly.
Shut the door in his face. What does he do? He goes and gets high. Expectations is like the number one for new people. And so people expect that meetings are going to be for them. And they have to shift that. It's like the meeting isn't for you first. It's for others. You show up for the newcomer. Yeah. And in return, you get this like great reward. That's like faith without works is dead. Like you know, we show up and then we get the, right? It's like it's kind of like a transaction.
Exactly.
The third step is a transaction.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I was just talking to somebody recently about this and they're like thinking about going out. This is a real conversation I had with somebody. And it wasn't framed in the way they're like, I'm going to go out, but they're like, you know, I've got like 10 plus years sober and I'm really starting to think, you know, maybe I can just have a cocktail at dinner.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Who says I can't do that? Like, what do you say to that person?
I always tell people that basically you're asking about people who want to drink around you or like
just people thinking that they got this.
Oh,
I don't think any amount of time you got this. Like, this is a daily thing. It's, you know, this is not a destination. This isn't like, okay, you've been sober now for 10 years. You've worked this solid program. Yep. No, now you can go have a drink. I mean, obviously you haven't worked a solid program or else you wouldn't be wanting to get that drink. But like, have you experienced that with anybody? And what do you say to that person if you do?
If they get to that point and they're like, you know, I think I could drink. I can drink.
Start rationalizing with themselves.
Oh, it happened. Oh man, it happened to all my friends that I got sober with. Every single one of them.
Okay.
They all went through that, and I think that if you continue walking on the, you know, the beaten path that we all do in sobriety in a 12-step program, if you stay in that lane, it's hard to think like that. We wander off. We start to convince ourselves that things are going to be different. Yeah. But I tell them all the time, like the big book says, our hats are off to them, right? Like, wish you the best. Give it a solid shot. Most of us got here and stayed here because we already tried that. Yeah. And we just hope and pray. I pray for them all the time. I pray for them that they'll make it back safely. You know?
And I feel like if you're doing the deal, you're not going to start thinking those things. So what are those things that start happening that a person starts feeling that? Like, what are they dropping off from? Meetings?
Always same things. Yeah. They stop going to meetings, no commitments.
Being of service.
Stop being of service. Stop, you know, practicing a spiritual lifestyle, right? Taking inventory, you know, checking our dishonesty at the door, right? Try to be transparent. Authenticity is huge. Yeah. Being honest with people where you're at. You know, resentments is like the number one thing, right? But people get that mixed up all the time. I see it happen the most in meetings. People get resentments. Oh yeah. A lot of it's relationships, or like early sobriety relationships is a big one, right? Other people's character that they don't like, and they get bitter and resentful and they don't handle it. Yeah. And they just let it fester. Big thing.
They'll take you out every time.
Yeah.
With drinking, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because it's like, it's such a social thing. Yeah. You know, and it's legal. And so it's like, the youngsters growing up, I even see it with my son who's 15, and it's like, oh, well, you know, people go out and they just drink on the weekends and, you know, it's no big deal. And it's such a society like norm to just like drink. Like, do you think someone that gets sober, they can go back into those environments with people that are drinking and hang out and have fun and do this whole social thing? Or do you think that's like making your way back down that road?
I think alcohol is never harmless. I don't think that alcohol for anyone is just harmless. I don't think it could be like super harmful for everyone. I know drinking is not, this is like this terrible evil thing. And I would hate to put that in my experience. I would hate to put that in people's heads. Yeah. Drinking can, like we talked about, earlier we were talking about Al-Anon, you know, alcoholics and drinking, anyone could become dependent upon alcohol. And I feel like that's where people start to really I see a lot of people come in the program who got addicted to drinking, but they weren't an alcoholic, you know? Got it. And they learned a new life. But it's always sketchy. Like I would not, like I said, I found my new life. Yeah. Where trying anything else out, like smoking weed or drinking or doing some kind of weird, I know some people do the microdosing thing, cool, whatever, but it's not for me. I was like, it's not worth it to me. My life is too fulfilling right now to risk that.
Yeah.
So when people tell me that they are, I'm looking from my perspective. I'm like, no chance.
Yeah.
I don't want to try that because my end is always very clear when I start to use again.
Yeah, me too. I'm the same way. Like there's no way I could just like casually drink. That's just like totally out the window. Did you ever do fentanyl?
No.
Okay.
I talk about this all the time too. Dude, yeah. I would not be alive.
Yeah, me neither.
No chance.
I mean, I was always doing pills, but I mean, it was a long time ago and the fentanyl epidemic hadn't hit like it is now. It's just, it's just blowing my mind. And I mean, everyone's mind, I'm sure, just how many people are dropping like flies with this whole fentanyl thing. Have you experienced it firsthand?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I had a client and leave a program that I was working at about a year ago. He went out, he was a real deal, real deal. Like, I tell him all the time, I was like, congratulations, dude, you're the real fucking deal.
Yeah.
Like you're the addict of the hopeless variety unless you do something different.
Yeah. Chronic
relapser. And I saw him on the street. He was in a different program. He was getting a vape at a vape store. He walked up to me and he's like, hey, yeah, what's up? I said, do you want me to talk to you like as your like brother in sobriety or like your counselor? He said, I want you to talk to me like your brother. I said, if you don't surrender, if you don't do this thing, man, if you don't lean on people like me and other people around you who are doing the deal and stick in the center of the pack and do stuff differently and you change everything. If you don't, you're going to end up in a Taco Bell bathroom.
Yeah.
And I was like, I told him, I was like, I hate saying that, but I've seen it happen hundreds of times in my 8 years being clean. 7 years and 364 days. Sorry. I just fronted that. Sorry. Well, that's sketchy too. And it's really tragic. I told him that, but I meant it because it's happened to so many of my close friends. If the friends that I got sober with, they're not here either because they're using or in prison, but anyone else is because they overdosed on fentanyl.
Yeah.
All of them. And, a week later, he was found in a Burger King bathroom, that client. And I mean, that's for people, that's crazy but for us or for me, it's so sad because it's on a regular basis.
Oh yeah. It's happening so often. And I mean, people are now changing the way that we speak about it. Like instead of saying people are overdosing, they're saying they're being, poisoned, fentanyl poisoning.
Oh man. We're going to open that can of worms.
Yeah. Like, what are your thoughts on that? There's no right or wrong answer.
There isn't. But I actually do have a stance on this. Personally. I don't think fentanyl kills addicts. I think it's thinking that's going to be different this time does. There's a certain tragedies that happen when people pick up for the first time and they OD and die. It's really sad. It happens all the time with teens, right? Taking like ecstasy pills or smoking marijuana that's laced with fentanyl. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But it happens. But the addicts who use fentanyl, it's just what's it called? That highway in Germany. It's the Autobahn. Right? There's no speed limit. Yeah. That's what fentanyl is for an addict.
Right. So you're saying for the addict, but if you're just like some college kid and you think you're taking a Xanax.
That's the one I'm talking about before. That's different.
You'd consider that poisoning.
I would say that's yes, but yeah, and there's police officers who are dying.
Yeah.
Handling bags.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the fentanyl's like gnarly as shit. I mean, I can't even believe like inhaling it in a room, you can OD and die. It's crazy. But those are different to me. But when we start talking about addicts though, and like alcoholics, I'm like, that's not what takes us out. Cause we wouldn't have ever started if we didn't have this. And listen, I have a lot of trauma. I have a lot of things, a lot of it in my life. And you could say that, it fueled a lot of my early stuff. Sure. But me staying sick is because my brain.
It's so true.
I stay sick because my brain wants to keep me sick.
Yeah, it's so true.
So that's why I tell people that whole thing. It's like when I go back home and everything's, missing and gone, I convince myself that this time getting the ticket, going on the plane, going out, that's going to be different. And by the way, that island I'm talking about is the first time you wake up like in a hotel after 10 years of using. People out there who are addicts out there who are maybe clean for the first time, I really challenge everyone to think about the first time you came to, where you thought to yourself, oh, I used to love skateboarding, or I used to love going to the movies with my friends, or I used to love going to church with my parents. I don't know. I didn't, but I used to love these little things in my life.
Yeah.
And they're all gone. And I've been so constant. And this is the one thing that I always challenge any act to think about. If you're so sure about your next step, if you're so sure about your life and what you need to do next, I want you to think about that first time you came to after the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. I just got to go with the next one, the next one. Oh, okay. The amount of effort, the amount of resilience you had to a life fulfilling, right? The amount of resilience you had to that.
Yeah.
I would challenge them to think about that before they make their next decision in their life.
Yeah.
Because it is baffling to me how we can convince ourselves that the sky is blue when it's overcast right now.
Right.
You know, it's just, it's crazy to me. I'm looking them straight in the eyes. I'm telling them that's not going to work, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I love your thought process and the way that you think about it, because it's so true, you know? So you believe like the first time you pick up, that's a choice. After that, do you believe that's a choice, or is that this other stuff that's going on with alcoholics and addicts?
You're talking about the fentanyl still?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, fentanyl is just, it's the same thing, but it's definitely more lethal. I mean, anyone who is reckless with using any other substance can also OD and die.
Yeah.
In the same way. It's just that it's such a little amount can kill you.
Yeah.
And such a little amount can, and it's, you know, it's like little grenades everywhere.
Right.
Like you don't know which bag has how much.
Yeah.
And then people are saying, we just have to, you know, give them these testing kits.
That's not
what? I get it. That can be really helpful. But in my head, I'm like, I would have never used a testing kit.
Yeah.
I would have
no
like
way.
one way to find out, because people don't realize that we're that sick.
Yeah,
like,
no, you're not. You don't care to like wait to see if you can test it. Oh, someone's going to bring a testing kit in 5 hours. Oh yeah, I'll just wait.
The thing is, people have to understand, we don't care about that. We don't, every time we shoot up, every time we use something, we're not thinking about our life. We're thinking about a feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
And nothing else matters but that feeling.
Yeah.
And people don't get that. And it's hard for normies to get that.
Yeah, they don't understand it. I mean, we don't understand it half the time until we really do the work.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's why I was telling our homegirl over here, she's awesome, by the way.
Yeah,
I was like, you know, I was talking to any normies that I enter, I was like, we need you.
Yeah.
We need advocacy over here, because they might not understand. We have to help them understand that we are so sick. I tell family members all the time of people who are addicts, your son is really sick. Like he's terminally ill.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's how it needs to be looked at.
It has to be looked at like that.
Like that's really it. That's not just like talking shit or being dramatic. Like it's a terminal illness when you're to that point.
So when the fentanyl comes in that's why I'm like, I'm not going to let this whole fentanyl thing like, it's a serious issue, and I want there to be a solution. I think that but that's just not the problem. I know that's really controversial.
No, but I do hear what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense.
And I like the whole.
And I think probably
fentanyl,
a lot of people, but I think a lot of people probably feel the way you feel. They're just too scared to say it like that.
Oh yeah, I'm not afraid to say it.
You're just really blunt and honest.
Yeah, and I don't want to. That's the thing too. I need that authenticity. I need someone to tell me straight up. Like, of course, how convenient. Like, it kind of goes hand in hand with the whole. Religious programs I went through before. They're great. They're awesome.
Yeah.
But how convenient is it for an addict to hear, and this drives me up the wall when this happens, drives me up the wall. But when people say, we're going to pray that you're going to be healed. That's amazing. I love that. God can heal me. He does on a daily basis. He helps me on a daily basis. But how convenient for the addict to hear that.
Yeah.
And they don't understand. And this is the problem that I have, is a lot of those people who are offering these programs for addicts and offering these other programs to treat them. It's kind of like, it's almost like, I hate to say this, but I'm just being honest. It's like sending your family member who is like, you know, stage 4 cancer, right, to a CVS, you know, to get like cold medicine. In my head, I'm like, okay, that's great. And I love that. And God is real. In my opinion, I believe in my luck, God is real. Yeah. And my higher power is Jesus Christ, you know? But me to go to somebody and say, you're going to get healed by this, and we're going to walk you through this. Yeah. Just by off of faith alone is so reckless. It drives me crazy. I hear all the time. I see so many people leave 12-step programs, and they're doing this, and they start going to church. And I love church. Like, I can't say it stresses enough. But in the same thing, we're talking about the whole fentanyl thing. It's like how convenient it is for me to blame the fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
When the truth is, like, it doesn't matter what I get. It might get me there faster, of course, and it's tragic. Mm-hmm. And it removed me from all these other opportunities I might have had. Like, if I was just doing tar, you know, like the good old tar that we used to have back in the day, then I might have had more opportunities to get clean. Mm-hmm. Like, I had a significant other pass away in 2011, right? And I found her, and I remember that she had 30 opportunities in treatment to get clean, you know, and 30 detoxes. And she was the addict of the hopeless variety, right? If fentanyl was here, she would have passed away, you know, after one. You know what I'm saying? You get what I'm trying to say? It's like,
I totally get what you're saying.
It's just, the truth is that people, it's just, for us addicts, it's too convenient for us to think like that. So I always try to challenge people and I also encourage people. I was like, hey, church is great. I love that. I've been involved in many ministries. I love it. But to be telling an addict or an alcoholic that you can help them and you're not an addict or an alcoholic, and that prayer and faith alone will heal them, is just reckless because of how severe their situation is.
It's a terminal illness.
Yeah.
You need to do the steps.
Yeah.
You know, you need to work that program. It's the spiritual thing, which you're saying, which I totally agree with.
Yeah.
Because nothing else worked for me.
Yeah.
It's great to have these other things and have faith and have this and have that, but unless we truly work what's really going on, like those little buffers, Band-Aids aren't going to like fix us.
Yeah.
So I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. What does sobriety, recovery, long-term recovery like feel like to you? Talking about like feelings, like what does that feel like for you today?
It's definitely more about what I do than how I feel now.
Okay.
Before, it was trying to get a feeling.
Yeah.
Because that's what I did my whole life. So panels, detoxes, doing all that stuff early on, I was like, oh, do everything. And it felt great. You know? But now it's more of my life is because the purpose has been found. And then I have a foundation. It's more like, okay, the action goes first. And it's, so I do things on a regular basis. That's what goes first. And then everything else follows, and it's amazing. I don't have to worry about being around alcohol or drugs. Yeah. I played a show at the Whiskey Go-Go last night, you know, with my band, and we were playing with Head PE, you know? Yeah. You ever listen to Head PE?
Huh?
You ever listen to Head PE?
I've heard them. Yeah. I mean, I don't listen to them all the time, but my son does.
They're awesome. They're awesome. But I did drugs back. I mean, there's so much stuff that goes back there. And I never thought about one time last night till I was thinking about going on the podcast today. I'm like, that was crazy. I played the Whiskey last night at a bar. So, and I've learned in my sobriety that long term, you know, when you get some more time, it could be a year, 2 years, I don't know. But for somewhere along the way, I found out that it doesn't matter how I feel, doesn't matter what I say, it matters what I do. And so if I keep doing the deal and the action weekly, daily, hourly sometimes, then everything else is always going to be okay. Nothing, no financial things, no even like loss of people will change my sobriety or my serenity. As long as I stay on the path and I choose action first, everything else is great. And, you know, I have a relationship today that's, you know, probably the healthiest I've ever been in, to be honest with you. But I have a 6-year-old daughter. Her name's Avery. Nice. And with all these things going on in your life, you care about so much and you love so much, things can go wrong and things can not work out and things can end up being heartbreaking. But I know that I've learned over trial and error that if I'm staying in my meetings every week, I'm helping people, I'm sponsoring guys, I'm helping people randomly at a gas station. It matters what nobody else sees. If I want to put a clip in here for anybody in recovery, I will say this. Okay. It doesn't matter what you do, or it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter how you feel, it matters what you do. And what matters most is when people aren't looking. Yes. Like I agree with that. We were just talking about this on the last podcast. Yeah. I can't tell you, it's the stuff that nobody sees that only you and God see. That's the stuff that counts the fucking most. Yes. Yeah. That stuff like speaks to my heart, you know, and I try to get up and do that every day and be a good human being. Yeah. You know, and just help people any way I can. And what happens when you're not, Jenny? When I don't do that, when you're not a good human being, what happens? I feel like shit. And then what do? I get in my head. I get restless, irritable, discontent.
And eventually I'm thinking about getting high.
Yeah. But then what do you do to combat that when you mess up? Or when you're like, man, I was not a good person today.
I do my reprieve, admit that I was wrong,
get
into action.
Yeah, get into action.
Yeah, it's actually very simple.
Super simple.
Right? Like
it's
the thing that you've been saying through this whole podcast is very simple.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to do it. But if you can get on a consistent level doing these things, your life can be beautiful.
It can be beautiful and more consistent. And I don't even know. Jenny, I don't even know how the fuck I'm still here. I don't.
Well, because it sounds like you've done this program exactly the way you're supposed to do it.
Well, not exactly. I did everything wrong except for get loaded in my first 2 years.
Okay, well.
I didn't do the whole steps right. I got a girlfriend in rehab. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Got a girl for my first year of sobriety. Toxic. Did all the stuff. I did everything that was actually not, but I got enough pain after this to surrender completely. Right?
That's what I did too. I mean, my first 5 years were like shit, pretty much. And the last 2 years have been just unbelievable.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. And the last 2 years, all the doors have opened up in the right places. The right people have aligned with me.
Yeah.
I've made the most amazing, beautiful connections with people.
Awesome.
And that's because I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
And if we're not in the right place, nothing around us is going to be. You know, people like to play this like victim mentality or, oh, I'm having bad luck or why this or why that or boo-hoo. And it's like, well, because you're not doing something you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, but if we're truly living with our purpose and we're aligned with that and we're getting up and suiting up and showing up every day as the best versions of ourselves that we can be that day, everything's going to fall into place.
Yeah. Show up rain or sunshine or.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really happy for you.
Thanks.
You said something right there. Can I talk to you about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You said something. You said for the first 5 years, my life was, you said your life was shit.
It was shitty. I mean, maybe that's like a harsh choice of words.
It's okay.
I was sober, but I wasn't working a solid program.
And that's the worst, right?
Yeah, I emotionally relapsed over and over again. At 2 years sobriety, I went on a high-speed chase, because I was so messed up in my head because I hadn't done the work.
Like a high-speed chase, like on the freeway?
Like a high-speed chase with helicopters and cops, and I was wielding a gun.
That's sick.
Yes, I don't talk about it often, but hey, why not?
Hey, I if you want, go ahead. I'll share something too. My sobriety.
But I was sober.
Yeah.
And thankfully, thank God, I got put on a 5150 instead of being arrested and put in jail. But that's because I hadn't done the work and I was so bankrupt and I was so miserable in my recovery. And it was after those things happened that I was like, okay, this obviously isn't working and I'm on my way to a relapse if I don't really start doing. And I was like trying to do AA and do the steps and do this, but I wasn't in it. I was like a robot, like going through the motions, but I was that person sitting in the back of the room bitching, or I was the victim, or it was all those things still, all the things, because I hadn't really taken a look at myself. But as I, more time passed, I did the work, did the steps, went to therapy, did a lot of spiritual, excruciating work. But in that excruciating work came the promises. And learning to love myself and going from a victim to a survivor and, taking the why not me mentality and just doing what I needed to do. But it was like a 5-year process of rolling around in shit to find what I needed.
Do you think you were in denial?
Of what? Of being an alcoholic?
Of thinking that you were worthy of a life, happy, joyous, and free?
I don't think so.
Did you struggle with accepting that though? Did you struggle with the idea of you deserved a life to being happy?
No, I honestly didn't struggle with that. I didn't hang out with any drug addicts, any alcoholics. I was had this successful life and used drugs behind closed doors.
Gotcha.
And so I was so foreign to treatment, AA, what any of that meant. I didn't get it. And I'm from Canada originally, so I'm out here. I'm by myself. I don't know anybody in these communities. And so I didn't seek it out. So I was lost, very lost in those 5 years. And again, I put the work in, but it took that long.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I don't deserve this. It was just this overwhelming, I'm lost feeling. Let me figure this out. And I'm sure trying to justify in my head that I didn't need to do all this stuff these other people are doing. I don't need to do all that because I'm not like them, but then realizing I was just in a different way.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say you are a miracle.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's not very often you hear that. Like that's really special. I'll be on. That's a very special part of your story.
Thanks.
That you're able to be honest about. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Really
And
cool.
but you said you had something you were going to share too. Is this
Well,
did you go on a high speed chase?
No, I did. Well, I didn't, but I've had helicopters over me on the motorcycle on accident.
Okay.
They just yeah. But no, I at 3 years sober, I got committed to the hospital.
Yeah. On like a 5150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't really have like a plan of like necessarily harming myself necessarily. I guess I did, but I didn't know what was going on. I just had lost my mind.
Yeah.
I was still going to meetings, still doing stuff, but the problem for me was I struggled with surrendering everything. You know, I had a pretty successful business, and made a lot of money and had a lot of things, and I didn't delegate, and I just burnt myself out, and I wanted to live, and I just lost my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that I lacked some, an untreated alcoholic in scripts is like, right, a very unpleasant person. And I became very unpleasant, but I was still doing the deal, but my life had become so big. My program didn't match that.
Yeah.
My program wasn't first. My program was there no matter what, but it didn't come first. And everything else was just kind of, and I called a doctor, a friend of mine. I said, I messed up. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And he was talking to me, and he's like, I think that you should go to go get seen by somebody. So I went to go get seen. But while I was there getting seen for like an evaluation of what's going on with me, this guy stole my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, this homeless guy.
Oh, no.
And an altercation occurred, and they committed me after that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, and it was like locked down for like 5 or 6 days. And I was sober.
Yeah.
You know? This is the first time I've ever talked about this on a podcast.
Okay.
By the
And
way.
I think it's the first time I've ever talked about this on a podcast.
Yeah, it happened. I've heard it happen to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think some people would be like, what the heck? Well, maybe we're just some are sicker than others. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Oh, I was definitely sicker than others for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, that's the thing. You said something really important there. You said like, you didn't let people know
Yeah.
what was going on. Right?
Nobody. Yeah.
And I couldn't because that's the other thing too about my childhood too. Like growing up, like I wasn't able to be okay. Like I wasn't able to be not okay.
Yeah. Same.
Right. Pastor's family. We all had to be okay. Everyone had to be, we're going to show up for church. Everyone's going to, dress up, show up, and nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
It's not the instructions that are told, but that's just how it goes. So even in my sobriety, sometimes in AA, we have time and we're like, you're supposed to be an example. And that's just not true. For anybody listening who is currently in the program, you are robbing yourself of future sobriety if you put the expectations on yourself that you have to be this certain spiritual gangster or this certain spiritual giant in sobriety.
Exactly.
We would much rather you show up to a meeting and tell us that you're a fucking mess.
Yeah.
I would have preferred myself to go to a meeting and say, I'm fucking about to lose my mind.
Yeah.
Will somebody help me? I don't know what's going on. I didn't do that.
Right. And I didn't either.
Yeah.
And now I can say it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, those first few years I was fucked up.
Yeah.
Right. But like when I was in it, I'm like, I'm good. And
we go to the wrong people too. We go like I remember my sister came over. She didn't know. I probably scared the shit out of her, because, they never thought I was loaded because I wasn't loaded. It just was like, I was so fucking sad.
Yeah.
And another thing too, you probably identify with this too. I don't know, but a lot of us come and get clean sober and there's still work to do with trauma. There's still work to do. Like I thought that because I did 38 sessions of EMDR in rehab, and I did the 12 steps.
You're good.
I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
No, it's not the case.
And people, we have to normalize that too. We have to normalize there's mental health stuff going on too for some people. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And we can bring that up and we can bring that up to our sponsors and we can bring that up, but sometimes it's important to just like keep that door open for people.
Yeah.
Because you can show up as a mess and have 7 years clean.
Absolutely. And you can continue to be a mess because we're all a beautiful mess in one way or another at any point in time. And that's okay because you know what? We're human and we all have good days and we have bad days, but we don't need to use over it anymore.
Yeah. And just because, and people go to meetings and share, I tell people all the time, I was like, just be authentic. Like, don't, You know, I can go to a meeting anytime, any day of the week and make anyone think that my life is fucking fantastic.
Right.
It's very easy to do that.
Yeah.
Because I know what to say. I know how to say it. I know I've learned, I've heard it. I can just regurgitate all this spiritual giant shit that I've heard.
Yeah.
But what's going to matter the most to the new person, right, is the transparency about what life is actually like. You know what I mean? Exactly. Talk about things that have happened that you've been able to walk through. Like we talked about earlier, I do the action first so that I can walk through things.
Exactly.
And ever since that happened to me, I don't think I would still be here today if I hadn't of gone through that in my sobriety. Yeah. You know, maybe I don't know how you feel about that, but
I do. And just like us, the last 20 minutes, I disclosed, you disclosed, you know, and then we're both like, okay, cool. And someone listening is like, fuck, me too.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a difference, that authenticity.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I want to ask you one final thing to someone out there that's struggling right now, that's on the fence, doesn't know if they want to get sober. What would you say to that person?
And they don't want to be sober?
They don't know.
Oh, they don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
They got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Should I do it? I don't know.
For anyone who's out there, who's new, who's wanting to, you know, do something different, or if they're on the fence of getting sober, not getting sober, all I know is that you will never know what life could be if you keep doing the same thing you've always done. But from my experience, doing something that I've never done before and got extremely uncomfortable gave me a life that I never thought I could ever have or deserved. And so I'd highly recommend find a local meeting, put your hand up in the air. You don't have to know anything at all or know everything. You just put your hand up, say you need help, and there will be people there that will help you. And if you follow their direction, you just might find a life, you know, worth living, and you don't have to use or drink ever again. You don't ever have to pick up ever again.
Yeah, what a nice thought. Yeah. You don't ever have to pick up ever again or drink. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you guys, we'll see you next time.